Hello and welcome back to Logan Sounds Off. Today I'm interviewing the one and only Shiva. Shiva, how are you today?
I am excellent. How are you, Logan?
I'm doing very well.
This is exciting to be here.
I know, it's brilliant. And at the moment, actually, we are at Music Generation on the 2nd of March 2024. It's called We Are Music Generation. And I've done some interviews today, but at the moment I'm interviewing Shiva. So before we actually start off with talking about how you got to become a musician, Shiva, could you tell the listener what you're actually doing at Music Generation today?
Yep. So I am here to do some workshops on songwriting and creativity. So I gave 2 workshops this morning, hour-long workshops, and people could sign up and come up, and we talked about songwriting, because that's the main thing that I do, and it's the reason that most of us exist is the song, which is the most important thing. So we did things like, we talked about like the building blocks of a song. What is at your disposal to write a song? And it's really important that people learn the rules and then they learn how to break them.
Okay, that's very interesting how you mentioned there, learn to break them. And I saw tons of people going into your workshop today, so I was actually hoping to get in, but just I had an interview that clashed with it. But I will say, your music's very interesting, and you started playing music at a young age, but before you even picked up the guitar, what music were you listening to? Were there people who were in your family maybe, or were there friends who got you into music? Or was it yourself just discovering?
Definitely a family connection. So my dad is an accordion player. He plays traditional Irish music and plays professionally, and he also plays a little bit of classical guitar, not professionally. And so we grew up in a very, very musical household. So when we were about 4, we were all started on piano. Then we did violin lessons, and then I had a very short-lived career on the violin, and I moved on to classical flute. And as I was talking about this morning in the workshop, when I was growing up, there was kind of only 2 avenues to learn music. You could go down the trad route, or you could go down the classical route where you were doing your grades. Music Generation didn't exist when I was growing up, which is really sad, because I'm so delighted now, and I tutored for years in Music Generation Clare, where I'm from. And it was just so cool to see young people able to come into a class with me, and for me to be able to say, what do you want to learn? What would you like? What's the songs? Well, and they'd love to learn Ed Sheeran, or we were learning Taylor Swift songs or Beatles songs. But when I was growing up, it was like you had to do your grades. And like I did learn a lot from learning classical music, but it didn't like light my fire at all. But I was lucky because my dad not just played Irish music, he listens to a lot of music, and he taught me the most important thing that I think I learned from my dad is how to listen to music, how to listen to it with intention, and how to recognize what's going on and why something is so brilliant, why something stands out. And so like the music that we were listening to growing up, we listened to an awful lot of gospel music, we listened to African music, classical music, a lot of jazz. My dad loves jazz music. And my rebellion against all the trad that I was hearing was that I didn't want to play trad. That was the one thing I didn't want to know about when I was growing up. I love trad now, but when I was a kid, I didn't want to know about trad.
I see.
Yep.
Well, now, you actually moved on from some really cool genres to a very interesting one. So when you were 10, you started playing guitar, but when you were 19, I believe you were in high school in France. Mm-hmm. You learned jazz guitar, or jazz minouche nearly. Was it from a gypsy?
Yep.
Yes,
so
right. That it's very interesting. How did you come to learn such an intricate and really fascinating genre of music in France?
Yeah, so I went and did transition year in school in France, and I went back to live there again on my own when I was like 19 or 20, and again it was through a connection that my dad had with he's just so fascinated by music. He's always seeking it out everywhere he goes. So he had met some manouche jazz players in the south of France there, and he introduced me to them. And I started to get lessons from them. And again, Dad would have had us listening to Django Reinhardt and Stefan Grappelli growing up. So it was a genre I was familiar with. And personally, like I'm not very, I'm not drawn to the kind of academic side of music. I don't really understand a lot of the theory. But when it came to the guitar anyway, it was very much just like shapes and feeling. That's what I was using. I was like, okay, I have 4 fingers at my disposal to put on the guitar, I can put them in different places, and how I place my fingers on the guitar gives me a particular feeling, and that's what I really was drawn to when it came to jazz. I loved the chords. I loved that you could like make a chord sound like juicy or like, you know, more melancholic, or, you know, just opposed to your standard chords. I love standard chords as well, but it's just so much cooler to be able to put something almost like mysterious into the chord.
Yeah, I know I listen to a lot of jazz myself, and I found that I'm listening at the moment to a lot of Miles Davis, and he, in Kind of Blue, guitars, there was none.
No.
But in A Silent Way, which was released, I'm not sure which year, but a lot longer after the Kind of Blue, on the second track in A Silent Way, they actually added guitar. And I love that album because of that. Jazz guitar, it fascinates me so much because I can nearly not understand it. So I really like that. But now, with jazz guitar and all these inspirations and influences, you've come to do your own solo career. As your own name, Shiva, and you've released tons of music, including some reimagined mixes, which we're going to come to. But when you were recording your first album, how did jazz, manouche, and folk and trad influence your album?
Yeah, I guess it had just been all the things that I had been listening to throughout my life. And again, it goes back to that idea of like listening to with intention. And so all of these things came together in this big melting pot. And I didn't really know how Infinite Space, the album, was going to turn out. I knew we were going to make a record, but I didn't know it was going to be that big, huge, expansive sound. And I think it was reflecting the place that I was in. But it is very a unique kind of style of music. And when we were finished making the album, the producer Tyler Duncan, we were close to finishing on it, and he said, I don't know if I could put a genre on this. And he said, if I had to put a genre on this, though, I would call it cosmic, folk-informed, jazz-tinged post-pop. And he was kind of joking, but I actually use that now in my bio, in my press releases and everything, because I think it does describe it. It's a little bit folk, it's a little bit jazz.
I actually completely agree.
Yeah, it's post-pop, and it's very cosmic.
Yeah, there is that. If you actually haven't listened to Infinite Space, you should definitely have a listen. It's just a fantastic record, like nothing you've ever heard before. Definitely cosmic. There is this ambient feel to it, really, really cool. But you were mentioning there Tyler, and it's interesting, Tyler was nominated for a Grammy. Tyler does some very cool music, including obviously Infinite Space. What was it like working with Tyler, and what was the production experience like?
It was like nothing I've ever experienced. It was just such a privilege and an honour to be able to work with somebody who's such a genius as Tyler. He's a very interesting connection with Ireland, because when he was about 12 he saw a video of Riverdance, and with no Irish background or Irish heritage, he became really attracted to Davy Spillane playing the pipes. And when he watched the video, he actually didn't even know what the instrument was. They had to wait till the credits came on to figure out, and they were wondering how to pronounce the word Uilleann pipe. His mom. So he became very attracted to this instrument and actually started to try and make his own pipes by going to the local hardware shop in Ann Arbor in Michigan. And his parents realised, okay, he actually is serious, and they found him a teacher in Detroit. And he was going to this teacher for a couple of years until his teacher said, I can do no more with him, you're going to have to take him to Ireland. So they moved him over to Ireland when he was 16, and he started to compete in all of the Flacyols, and he won. He was the first American to win a title on the Bowron. He won several Uilleann pipe competitions, and he then met his one of his favourite pipers at the time, John McSherry, who went on to become his mentor, and then the two of them went on to co-found the band The Olam. And so I found it really unique to work with Tyler, because I had this very trad upbringing, but I don't play trad. I understand it. I have definitely an understanding knowledge of trad, but I don't play it at all. I wouldn't even go so far as to ever back somebody on the guitar. Playing it, because I feel like that's a different thing, and I haven't gone down that avenue yet. But Tyler then had this kind of American upbringing, and then he entered into our Irish culture, and so we kind of met in the middle with this understanding of I suppose, because I was influenced by a lot of American culture and American music, and so we met in the middle, and he was kind of particularly fascinated by the Irish language stuff that I was doing, and it was definitely done in a new context that it hasn't been done in before. But even just getting to work with Tyler and his process and how he chooses things, and I learned so much about intention and like really taking our time. The album itself took 3 years to make, so we spent 3 months in his studio in Ann Arbor in Michigan, working 6 days a week, 8 days, 8 hours a day. And then at the end of that, we finished the record remotely over 2.5 years. So we had a really cool setup where I was in Clare, Martin Atkinson-Burrell, who's my piano player, my musical director, and very much my partner in musical crime. And he was in Limerick, and Tyler was in Ann Arbor. And we had this cool setup where we would go on Zoom with each other, and Tyler would screen share his studio screen, and we could listen to his audio in real time. And so he'd be showing us like, this is what I did, or what do you think of these ideas, or this is the percussion combination we wanted. And so I was in Clare, Martin was in Limerick, and Tyler was in Ann Arbor, and we finished the record like that.
It's mad.
Yeah.
And you know what, you were mentioning there actually Tyler with the Olam.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking about this earlier, and I was going, God, I'm interviewing with Shiva. You know, I must ask her about, in my mind I was going, is it the Olam or the Olam? Mm-hmm. I didn't know how to pronounce it because I'm very new to the Olam.
Mm-hmm.
But what was it like working with a producer who was also part of a band who you collaborated with on the album, on one of your songs? Again, I can't pronounce it. I do speak Irish, but just I never encountered this word before.
Oh yes, Cravaka.
Cravaka.
So,
Thank you so much.
Cravaka.
But what was it like collaborating on
Yeah,
Cravaka?
it was a lot of fun. I discovered the Olam's first album when they put it out in 2013. A friend passed it on to me, and their first album just completely blew my mind. I didn't know what I was listening to, and I just wanted to hear more. And so they came back to tour in Ireland in 2018, and I was asked to join them for the full tour. We did like 19 dates in 21 days all around Ireland.
Wow!
And I was with them for the whole thing. And that's really when Tyler and I became quite good friends. And it was on the last night of that tour that I asked him if he would be interested in producing an album for me. I knew of his work with Theo Katzman from Wolfpack. I knew that he had done some production stuff with Wolfpack, and I knew he had produced for Carly Rae Jepsen, and he had produced for other artists that I admired. And so I asked him if he'd like to produce the record, and I was so lucky that he said yes. And yeah, working with him and the Olam was really, really fun experience because we'd had that connection from the tour. And the song itself, Cravaka, I had it for a long time, and it had never worked in a band context. Any of the previous bands that I'd worked in, I just always sang it solo. But when the Olam came along, they like added this kind of like special sauce to the track, and they really did a great job. And it's great then that, you know, when I still tour with them. We just finished a UK and Ireland tour in January and February, and so it's great to be able to go and guest with them during their set to sing that song.
Wow, though, the Olam, I actually have them saved on my computer to have a listen because there's so much music at the moment.
Yeah.
But they're a band that I've been put on that's now a big priority to me, especially now after listening to your album. I want to know more about that kind of genre. But if you actually haven't, you should definitely check out the Olam. They're on Bandcamp, they're on Spotify, they're on everything. Just check them out. And now I want to move on to actually, you've done some reimagined mixes of your tracks, which is really interesting. And I admire you for that. You're going back on a whole entire album and reimagining it. Well, some of the tracks anyway. And you've worked with the RT Concert Orchestra as well, which is a massive honour. Just some really great people. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the idea for the reimagined versions of the songs came from, there's a wonderful New Zealand singer called Kimbra. Do you know Kimbra?
I am not familiar.
She's brilliant. No. She, do you know that song, Somebody That I Used to Know?
Yeah.
She's the female voice on that song.
No way.
Song, yeah. And she has her own career. She was signed to a major label. She's got 5 or 6 albums that she put out. And I've been following her. I actually went to LA to see her when I lived in Canada, and I went to London to see her 2 or 3 years ago. I'm just such a huge fan. She's an amazing producer, an amazing singer, vocalist, an amazing performer, and she put out a reimagined version of one of her albums called Primal Heart, and it was very stripped back and it was totally different, and I was so drawn to this idea because I feel the same way. It's like my songs, there's like, who's to say what the definitive version of a song is? You can always be changing a song. Songs are always evolving for me, and that's particularly apparent when like I write a song. It's usually just me on the edge of my bed with an acoustic guitar, and then we went into the studio and we put like, some of the songs had like hundreds of tracks on them, big arrangements and everything, and then I come back out and then I go to tour the songs, and sometimes it's just back to me on an acoustic guitar again, or sometimes it's with a full band with 5 of us, or sometimes it's 3 of us, and so like there's so many different ways a song can be presented, and I'm always curious about which way is the right way to lead you with a song, and there is no right or wrong answer. So I liked this idea of like reimagining some of the versions even bigger, like with the Metropole Orchestra and with the RT Concert Orchestra, and then doing it like we did with How to Change Your Mind, where we completely stripped it back and took it out of that big space and brought it into a more intimate space.
Wow, though, those mixes especially are incredible, and I nearly like different tracks, so I would definitely recommend listening to them after you've had a listen to Infinite Space. But as my final question, you have like jumped straight onto the Irish music scene with so many different genres, and it's perfect, your album, with these so many different genres, because then so many more people can enjoy it. Not just people who love trad, people who love jazz. Not only people who love jazz, but people who love folk. So it's really well done. And so what tips would you give to young musicians who want to get out there, maybe do their first gig, record a track, try and get signed to a record label? What would you say?
Well, the best piece of advice that I was given by several people over the years when I was like quite young, and often it was like through like friends of my dad or musicians that my dad know, where I'd go to them for advice and they'd always just say to me, just keep doing what you're doing. And when I was younger, I was like, what do they mean keep doing what they're doing? I am doing what I'm doing. But then the penny kind of dropped as I got a bit older, and you just have to keep doing it. Like it's all about it. In particular when it comes to songs, I would say like discipline is quite important, that you're showing up every single day to write songs. You know, getting out there and doing as much as possible and not being afraid to, you know, release stuff. I think it's so important that we are releasing and then progressing and getting better and better all the time. And one thing I will say that I mentioned in the workshop this morning is, you know, it's so important to like learn from what's already available to us. So like I was saying to people this morning, like learn as many covers of other people's songs as you can, you know, because like that's how you learn how
It's
great
true.
songs are written. So like learn them on the piano, learn how to sing them, learn how to make your own version, your own reimagined version of your favorite song. And yeah, I would say just always stay true to who you are and what you want.
Well, that is a brilliant tip. So thank you so much, Eva, for first of all telling me that tip. And as well, everyone who's listening who wants to be a musician, listen to that, because that is very important. But as well, thank you so much for joining me on my podcast. It was great to have this chat. So I always find when I'm interviewing a person that I listen to their music and I get this really kind of nearly detailed image of what the album is meant to be, but always after interviewing somebody, I get a completely different outlook. So thank you so much, and I can't wait to re-listen to Infinite Space as a completely new album.
Cool.
So thank you so much,
Thank you for having
Shiva.
me, Logan. It's been a special honour.